and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 206, and today's date is November 4th, 2013, and the title of this episode is, Do You Feel It? Well, that's the economy imploding on itself. And let's get right into the economic collapse news and what we are seeing out in Italy, and we are seeing the same things in every single country. Right now, they had to revise some numbers. They had to let us know that, things aren't as good as they said they were going to be, because of all that propaganda during the summer months where they told us that, Italy, Spain, the whole Eurozone, unemployment's decreasing from 12.1% to 12%. They're coming out of the recession, but of course that was all fake. The unemployment actually increased from 12.1 to 12.2, and what we're seeing now is that Italy had to revise some numbers, and they're expecting that the GDP will contract by 1.8%, where they thought it was only going to contract by 1.7. So we can see already things are not going well. And if we look at something else here, and we look at Italy with their new car registration, we are seeing that car registration is down a lot. I mean, if we look back at the height back in 2008, they were close to 200,000 car registrations. Now that number is cut in half, about 100,000 for this year, for last year alone here, and it's decreasing this year. So what does that tell you? That tells you that they have high unemployment. People, if they have a job, they're not making as much as they did, and their money's not going as far. And right now, people are holding on to their cars and not buying new ones, and or they're getting rid of their cars and they are walking or biking or taking mass transit to work to save money. So we can see what is happening here in Europe. Now here in the U.S., we see other things happening. Now we see Kellogg's is going to cut 7% of its jobs, and they have roughly around 31,000 employees, so that's roughly about 2,100 people. And we see this happening all over the place. They keep telling us that unemployment is going down, it's getting better. Why are these major corporations laying off so many people? It makes no sense. Now, they're also talking that this holiday season is not going to be as good as it was last year. Well, forgive me, but last year, wasn't unemployment higher? Now, if unemployment has come down, wouldn't you think that the Christmas season would be better? But when you manipulate the numbers, certain things don't make sense. You would also think that retail sales were getting better, but as I reported, retail sales always declining. They have been declining this entire year. And what else do we know? Well, we also know that real estate is not doing as well as they're saying. Now, again, if unemployment is coming down, they keep, it was at 8%. I mean, if we look at last year, what was it, 8.5%? Now we're down to 7.2%. Now, common sense would say, wow, that's much, much better. I mean, the unemployment's coming down. More people have work. People are going to go out and buy cars. They're going to go out and they're going to purchase more things in the stores, and they're going to go buy a house because the youth are now getting jobs and things are getting better. But what are we actually seeing? Well, in my last reports, we learned that GM is channel stuffing, which all that means is they're giving all their inventory to the dealerships to hold on to it, so it looks like they got rid of it. We see retail stores closing, and we see mortgage applications and pending sales decreasing for the housing market. Now, the pending sales right now fell 21.1% in September. Now, wasn't President Obama just out there telling us that real estate is making a rebound and everything's going well and things are happening? And we can see that, since the real estate market's picking up, everything else is going to be doing better. And what we're actually seeing is the opposite. Mortgage applications declining. Pending sales now declining. Foot traffic where there's new home builders declining. Major furniture manufacturers going out of business. The Fed is still purchasing $45 billion worth of toxic real estate from the banks, and they're looking to increase the amount of quantitative easing. And don't forget, they're also still purchasing the $40 billion for Treasury bonds, and they would like to increase that also because most of the foreign nations are starting to realize that the U.S. dollar is losing ground and it is about to implode, collapse, whatever you want to call it, and they realize they're holding on to they're holding on to dollars and they're holding on to treasury bonds, and they don't want it. That's why Saudi Arabia, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries are starting to make deals with China. That's why China is going around and making a deal with Kenya to be the clearinghouse for China. They also did a swap with UK, which bypassed the dollar. So we see many things happening here all at once. Okay, what else is going on here? Well, it just came out, and as we know, real estate is declining big time. Now, it is different in everyone's areas. I get quite a bit of email, and I've been reading the email, and I'm getting so many now at this time, it's taking me a lot longer to answer. And if I just spent all day answering all the emails, I wouldn't have time to do anything else. So I'm moving at a slower pace right now, but I will get back to your emails. And people have been emailing me saying, oh, yeah, I don't see it in my area. But you know what? It happens in different areas at different times where you see real estate declining. But what is actually happening, and this is a huge, huge, huge indicator that things are not going well in the real estate realm. What we are seeing, and I've reported on this before, that there are major firms laying off people in the real estate, the mortgage business. And what we are seeing right now is that just right now in 2013, the first 9 months, they have laid off, these financial firms, 49,000 people. Why would they lay off 49,000 people if real estate is making a comeback? Think about it. They wouldn't. They would hire people to take on more business because more people are buying real estate. But when we really look down and we look through all the crap and everything like that, what do we see? We see hedge funds, investment firms purchasing homes with cash, money that was given to them by the Fed. This cash makes up around 60% of all home purchasing. This is why we're having a problem, because it's not real Americans buying the homes. Why can't the real Americans buy the homes? Well, we got to go back to 2000, 2008, 2009. The amount of foreclosures, the amount of short sales, and the amount of people who are unemployed or underemployed is tremendous. Why do you think the Fed is continually purchasing the toxic real estate? Because they haven't bought it all. There's millions and millions of properties left. Same thing with short sales. Plus, once you have a foreclosure or a short sale, or you're unemployed or underemployed, how do you think the people's credit rating fares from all of that happening? Well, they don't have credit. This is the problem. They do not have the ability to purchase a home at this time. Your credit is shot. You're not making enough money, equals no purchasing right now. And then people say, well, wait a minute. What about the youth? They're coming out of college, they're going and getting jobs, and now they can afford these homes. Well, guess what? the unemployment for youths coming out of college is around 40 to 50%. Most of these people coming out of work can even find work in their own field. So they're taking part-time work. They're still living with their parents, and they're not making any money. Now, I know the government officials, the Fed, they're all out there saying, no, everything is going well, and you should go back to school, you should get your diploma, you should get your degree, and you can use this to get a job, and you can buy a car, you can buy a house. But guess what? Most of these people can't even purchase. They can't even maintain their student loans. They can't keep up with the payments. And how do we know this? Well, a couple of reports ago, I reported that there's a huge student loan bubble being created right now because most of them can't. There's a lot of delinquencies. So guess what the Fed, the government, is going to do? The Education Department says it will begin reaching out by email this month to about 3.5 million federal student loan borrowers. Now, why would they do that? Why would they reach out to these people if times are so good? People are getting employed. You see the unemployment coming down, and you're going back to college, or you're going to college, you're getting a degree, and there's tons of work out there. Why would they have to reach out to 3.5 million students? Well, the department says many borrowers will qualify if their federal student loan debt exceeds their annual income. Those who qualify will either get their initial payment very low, or at this time they will not have to pay anything at all. So to me, and I don't know about you, but this shows me we have a major problem. It tells us that people coming out of school cannot find work, and if they do find work, it is not in their field, or they have temp jobs, and they cannot keep up with their student loan payments. This is the only reason they are reaching out and trying to sweep this under the rug and show that, no, nothing wrong over here. Everyone look away. Look at the stock market. That's where you want to look. Things are happening here. There are major problems. It's almost like in 2007, where most of everyone who wasn't paying attention was going about their day thinking everything was fine. Bernanke was out there telling us that the Fed contained the subprime, real estate is strong, they are not forecasting a recession, and of course he was saying this in the same year that everything just fell apart. So we are definitely seeing something happening. We're seeing major layoffs. We're seeing layoffs in the financial industry. We're seeing layoffs in the mortgage area of the financial industry. And we are seeing so many things. We're seeing retail stores closing, laying off people. They're telling us that the holiday season is not going well, and it will not go well. So we can see that things are absolutely falling apart. Now, in my other reports, I did mention something about bail-ins, but recently U.S. banks are presenting to the Federal Reserve their bail-in plan, and it shows how they're going to work through a major collapse of the banking system and how they're going to fund their banks so they don't implode on themselves. So what do we know? Well, we know there was a private meeting with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citigroup, Chase, and other banks with the Fed to go over their plan for bail-ins. And we understand that FDIC, Bank of England document, was the first document, the whole entire Bible of how the bail-ins are going to work. That document came out on December 12th. The Cyprus test was in February, March of 2013. So the document was already created before the Cyprus incident. And as everyone believes that this was the template of what is going to happen. And those people who still have money in the banks, who think it's safe, it's insured, and everything is fine, will be surprised when this occurs, when all of a sudden an event occurs, the banks are closed down. Just like in Cyprus, it could happen on a Friday, which it usually happens. They tell you, oh, we're closing down, just for maintenance or something. We'll reopen on Monday. You go to sleep on Friday. Over the weekend, you don't really think about it. Monday comes and the banks are still closed. And you start to wonder what is going on, and they make an announcement. Oh, because of what has happened from this event, we cannot keep the banks open. We need to freeze accounts right now because under the Dodd-Frank Act, we cannot get bailouts from the government. So what we need to do is we need to go into all of your accounts, put a freeze on them, take what we need to get the banks out of trouble. And what we'll do is we'll replace it with bank stock. We'll put it into your account, and at a later time, we'll refund this money maybe, depending on what the bank stock is worth. And of course, you're receiving bank stock from a bank that is collapsing. So that makes sense. And just like in Cyprus, they told you, oh, don't worry, we're only going to take 8 to 10% off of your account, and the rest will just keep frozen there. And what happened in Cyprus, they didn't take 8 or 10%. They took 47% of the people's money, and they kept the other money frozen. And it's going to be about a year before they can even take out their money. And this is what we're going to see. Now, what did they do already so people cannot transfer their money out of the country? Well, they already implemented capital controls within the U.S. with Chase and HSBC, and other banks are eventually going to do this. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to follow suit with the other banks, that they aren't allowing people to transfer money out of the states. And pretty soon, when the FACTA law comes into effect, and this will be July 2014, you will not be able to open up an account outside of the U.S. So what are we seeing here? Well, we are seeing that they are laying the groundwork for these bail-ins. That is what we are seeing. And for those people who still have money in the bank, I would start thinking twice. I mean, this is my opinion, but I would start taking it out, only keep the amount that you need in the bank to pay your bills, and the rest I would put someplace else. Invest in gold and silver, keep some cash, do whatever you have to do, but you do not want to wake up on that early morning to realize that all your money is gone, it is frozen, and all you have is worthless bank stock. And that is exactly what happened to the people in Cyprus. Now, we do understand that the LA airport shooting was a complete false flag event, and this was to push the agenda of the government, and in many different aspects. One, they really want to arm the TSA. So, of course, they are using this false flag event to say that all checkpoints and TSA agents need to be armed at this time. We also see that this individual had anti-government, conspiracy theory, something about New World Order, and you can see what they're doing at this point. They're painting a picture of anyone that is anti-government, who is a conspiracy theorist, who believes in the New World Order. These people are dangerous, and they will act out with a weapon and kill people. So they're lumping the people in a certain group right now. And we also know that this person used an assault rifle. So in the state of California, which is Dianne Feinstein's state, and we understand they have the gun bill and the UN Arms Treaty pending in the Senate, and we also understand that John Kerry also, he already signed the UN Arms Treaty and is just pending there waiting, and we understand that the Senate will not ratify the UN Arms Treaty. So what do they need to do? They need to push this agenda forward, so the senators and the people up in Washington and the people in the U.S. see that we need to have these laws on the books to protect ourselves from these crazy anti-government conspiracy theorists who carry assault rifles in states with very strong gun laws. So we can see the direction that they're heading in. Now, will they be able to push the gun laws with this episode, with this false flag? Most likely not. I mean, Dianne Feinstein was out there saying that she's going to try to push it, but she doesn't believe it's going to go anywhere. So let's take this a step further. So now what do they have to do? We all know. They need to create a horrific, major false flag that really, really hits home, that wakes the American people up to demand, to beg for the UN Arms Treaty and the gun bill. They will demand, please do something. We need something. And of course, the President, the Senate will be out there and going, oh, you know something? It just so happens we have the gun bill and the UN Arms Treaty sitting here waiting. Let's just vote for this right now. And this is what they will do, because this is their agenda. This is what they are planning. And I read to you in my other reports, I think it was report number 204 and 203, if you want to read that, of why they need to disarm the American people. And right now, the head of TSA he wants to arm the TSA officers now because of the events that just took place, and he'll be pushing for that. Now, I also talk a lot about the Internet and how the government wants to control it. And on Saturday, I talked about that there are 10 corporations that really control what you purchase and what you do. And there are like 6 media corporations that control what you hear. Now, they are trying a backdoor approach to control the Internet. And this is very interesting. What they want to do is and AT&T, Verizon, these companies, they want major corporations that own websites to pay them lots of money and give them the Internet speeds. Everyone else, like my site, would not get the fast speeds. It would get the slow speeds. So it's almost like you going across a bridge. The people who pay the most for the toll get to go in the fast lane. The people who pay a little less get to go in the trafficy slow lane. And the people who pay even less than that or nothing don't even get to cross the bridge. This is what we're seeing right now. And they want the major companies to pay quite a bit of money to have fast speeds, and everyone else to have slow speeds. And you say to yourself, well, what's the big deal? It's a little bit slower. But what happens is, most of the time when you do a search, it's equal right now. You click on the x22report.com site, hopefully it comes right up for you. You click on Best Buy or Google or AT&T site, and it comes up in the same time period. What will happen when they push this forward, you click on Google, AT&T, you get a nice fast response. You click on the X22 report site, you're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting. You might even get a message, can't display at this time. So you try again, you're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting. And what most people do, and there are statistics for this, if a site doesn't respond within, I think it's like 20 seconds or 15, maybe even less, people just X out and go someplace else. So any new blogger site, any new site that's coming up that doesn't have money will never be seen. And this is how they're trying to go around and control the Internet. And this is just another way of them using a backdoor approach to control what you see. Okay. Now, North Korea, supposedly from South Korea, which they reported on, that North Korea is creating an EMP weapon. They've purchased technology from Russia, and now they're developing this EMP weapon aimed at paralyzing the South Korea once they develop it. And we are looking at this, and we're seeing that they are using the propaganda for an EMP weapon, which very soon they will use the propaganda that they can fit it onto one of those North Korean rockets that can make it all the way over here to the mainland of U.S., and they can detonate an EMP pulse above the United States and knock out the electricity. So it always seems to come back to the electric going out or something with the power grid. And North Korea is also believed to run an elite cyber warfare unit of about 3,000 people that is committing cyber attacks on many different sites, and the U.S. has come out with their warnings saying that North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, Syria all have the capability of bringing down the power grid infrastructure. Now, we do understand that the U.S. government, central bankers, Israel, Saudi Arabia, definitely want to get a war started. They are going to do it. There's no doubt about it. They've done it before, and they will do everything and anything to get it started. And right now, Iran's president is saying that he is not optimistic about the ongoing nuclear negotiations with world power. And he should not be optimistic because the U.S. government, central bankers, Israel, Saudi Arabia, do not want, and other Middle Eastern nations do not want peace. They want to get into Syria and Iran to replace the U.S. dollar, to implement the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency in that country and sell their natural resources using the U.S. dollar. And they would like to set up a private Western central bank. So we know this is what they're trying to do. Right now, the U.S. had to step back because of the Russia, U.S., and Syria agreement to disarm Assad's chemical weapons, and Saudi Arabia and Israel are very angry about this. Israel was already tried to provoke Syria into doing something. They ran two different bomb runs, which they destroyed military bases, military depots that housed advanced missiles, as they say, and they destroyed them, and Syria did not retaliate or do anything. But then again, in my other reports, I said, if another country flew into your country, wherever you are, and bombed a military depot, what would your country do? And all of us pretty much most likely say the same thing. They would retaliate. There would be a war starting. But Syria didn't do this because they know they're being provoked. So, since the U.S. government is working with Russia and Syria right now and not working with Israel and Saudi Arabia, well, they are working with them in the shadows. We just don't see that. Saudi Arabia plans to expand weapon supplies and training of Syria rebels in Jordan. And what they are doing is they are helping them, supplying them with weapons, building the forces up for what is about to happen. And that is going to be a war in this region. Now, we understand and everyone believes that the U.S. government, central bankers, are all, going along with this chemical weapon disarmament and things like that. But let me take you back to December 19th, 2003. The Libyan President Gaddafi stunned much of the world by renouncing Tripoli's weapons of mass destruction program and welcoming international inspectors to verify that Tripoli would follow through on its commitment. Following Gaddafi's announcement, inspectors from the U.S., the United Kingdom, and international organizations worked to dismantle Libya's chemical and nuclear weapons program, as well as its longest-range ballistic missiles. Washington also took steps toward normalizing its bilateral relations with Tripoli, which had essentially been cut off in 1981. Now, this should be a lesson because this is what's happening in Syria. So, Although Syria met its deadline by destroying their chemical weapons building capabilities, Western powers, in collaboration with Israel and Saudi Arabia, will continue to destabilize the Syrian government. Washington is preparing for a military strike on Syria if President Assad and his government remain in power. What did we see in Libya? Why, if Gaddafi was agreeing to relinquishing his weapons of mass destruction and going along with the inspectors and handing everything over, and they inspected the whole country. Well, you have to remember, he was selling his oil not using the U.S. dollar. So eventually, the U.S. invaded. Syria is still selling its oil, and same thing with Iran, selling its oil not using the U.S. dollar. So what you see in front of you is an illusion. The U.S. government and central bankers will be going into Syria and Iran. You can count on it. And this goes on to say, war is on the agenda, even if Assad complies with any demands made by Washington and the Organization of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. The International Chemical Weapons Watchdog that oversaw the disarmament program, Iran, Russia, and China, are all well aware of this fact. After all, they are surrounded by numerous U.S. military bases, and they understand that this has happened before in Libya, and they understand what the central bankers actually want and what they will actually do. They will go to war. They will strike into Syria and Iran. Bolton is out there, and he is the UN ambassador, saying that Israel does not have much time to make a fateful decision about whether to strike Iran's nuclear sites, and they need to do this now. And he thinks that Israel doesn't have much time, and they should have done this years ago, because we all know intelligence is imperfect, and Iran may have more developed capacity and already developed a nuclear weapon, and they should really go in and bomb Iran at this time. So they are continuing. They are continuing with the propaganda, and they will continue with this, and we will definitely see something occur. And we have to remember that anything that happens over there, the American people in Congress are really not going to give any thought to. So something needs to happen here in the U.S. to have the people of the United States and the people in Congress to really react to something. So you can almost bet on that some type of false flag or some type of an event will happen here in the U.S. It will probably be a multi-pronged event where it will consist of cyber attack, biological, chemical, nuclear, and it will happen all across the U.S. to really shock and wake up the people. And all the government has to do is hold up their arm and point the finger to Iran or Syria, and all of a sudden we are at war. Okay, now we do understand there was another glitch in the NASDAQ, and we're seeing many of these glitches, and I believe this is all getting ready for the cyber attack to take place. We've seen other glitches throughout the internet with major corporations, and it seems like they are testing, implanting, and doing things, because these glitches just occurred. I mean, they just a couple months back they started, and it's been fine previous to this. So something is definitely happening. Now, we see that Anonymous is planning a million mass march across the country. This is going to happen tomorrow, November 5th. And they expect hundreds of thousands of participants to descend upon over 400 locations, including Washington, D.C., and we'll have to look to see what happens with this. It could be a potential false flag. Something might occur, or as most of these things go, nothing might even happen. Maybe even people won't even show up. I don't know. But we just have to look at that. And we also see in north central Texas, there is an exercise from Urban Shield, And this exercise is to assess the region's ability to successfully respond to and manage multiple terrorist events and other emergencies occurring simultaneously throughout the region. And we'll have to look at this. And this is going to occur November 9th through the 10th. So we will have to look at this as a potential false flag. We will see if something happens. And what we're seeing, just like in the LA shooting, we saw a similar drill, and also the chief of police said they did the exact same drill, and this occurred 1 month prior. So all these drills that we've been seeing up to this point, they've been practicing for some type of an event. And even though we have these drills coming up, and we have the power grid drill coming up a little bit later in November, we might not see something for a month and a half, 2 months later, because they did practice this. So we have to keep this in mind. Now, in Zero Hedge, there was the 10 Commandments of Government, and I thought this was very good. And I'm just going to read a couple of them to you. Number 1, generally speaking, government always grows. It never shrinks, whether times are good or bad. Number 2, in each area it purports to assist, government attempts to replace individual decision-making with central planning. Number 3, in order to implement its grand central plans and solidify its power, government must take from one citizen to give to another. This, in effect, lawful theft. Number 4, no matter how many times central planning fails, the self-appointed masterminds in government assert that this time it is different, and that with only a few tweaks and more money, their delusional plans will succeed. And we've seen this in Greece, where they are on their third bailout. We see this with Cyprus. The same thing. We see it throughout the Eurozone with the other bailouts. It is not working at all. Number 5, because it uses funds confiscated from taxpayers, self-restraint is no obstacle to government's ambitions. Number 6, its fundamental misunderstanding of human nature notwithstanding, government must claim to grant rights which require it steal the labors of one citizen to give to another, such as food, shelter, employment, and health care. Number 7, no matter how widespread the harm it causes, government will never provide an honest historical account. And I agree with that. Number 8, as more individuals and families are harmed by the failures of central planning, government must find suitable scapegoats, must lie to do so, and therefore must also repress dissent. Number 9, in order to build its network of redistribution and grow a culture of dependency on its services, government must inevitably undermine the family unit, religion, and the notion of God-given rights in order to cow, bribe, or intimidate its citizens. And number 10, as government grows ever more powerful, it must also become increasingly oppressive through compulsion and force. To do otherwise would mean government must shrink, and this it cannot do. They will never give up their power. They will never relinquish what they have. They will only fight for it. And we see this within every country that has gone through this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.